There comes a moment in every life when you begin to notice a strange pattern. The more real you become, the more resistance you awaken in others. You start to see that hostility often arrives uninvited, not because you've done harm, but because your authenticity disturbs something buried deep within the people around you. Someone who once admired you suddenly grows cold. A friend withdraws. A co-worker begins to undermine you. At first, you search for fault inside yourself. You replay moments, question your tone, your choices, your worth. But the truth is far more complex and far less personal. What you're experiencing is not rejection of who you are, but rejection of what your presence reveals. Carl Jung once wrote that every human being carries a shadow, the unseen, unhealed parts of the self we spend our lives avoiding. Our denied desires, our hidden envy, our repressed fears. Most people never face them. They bury them, disguise them, and pretend they don't exist. But the shadow doesn't disappear. It waits. It hides beneath politeness, behind smiles, under masks. And when it finally emerges, it rarely announces itself as self-awareness. Instead, it appears as judgment, irritation, or hatred projected onto another person, often onto the one who lives with courage, authenticity, and freedom. That's the paradox. When you step into your truth, you become the mirror that exposes others' illusions. Your calmness reminds them of their inner chaos. Your confidence highlights their insecurity. Your discipline shames their avoidance. Your kindness unsettles their guilt. It's not you they truly see. It's their own shadow reflected back at them. And the reflection is unbearable. Instead of facing it, they attempt to destroy the mirror. They gossip, they withdraw, they criticize. Not because you've wronged them, but because your authenticity confronts the lies they've told themselves. This is the hidden mechanism of human hostility, projection. Jung called it the unconscious transfer of one's own unwanted traits onto others. It's how people keep their inner darkness invisible. The cruel accuse others of cruelty. The jealous call others arrogant. The fearful label others reckless. What we reject in ourselves, we condemn in others. And that's why you'll often become the villain in stories you never wrote. To live authentically is to stand in the light, and light, by its nature, casts shadows. Those shadows aren't yours. They belong to those who refuse to see their own. When someone attacks your truth, it's often because your presence exposes their self-deception. You trigger the parts of them still chained by shame. The reaction feels personal, but it isn't. It's spiritual. You are touching the wound they've spent years protecting. The moment you understand this, everything changes. You stop taking rejection as proof of your failure. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop apologizing for being yourself. You begin to see hostility as a mirror, a sign that your light is touching darkness, not out of arrogance, but out of divine alignment. The soul resists what it cannot yet integrate. Your authenticity becomes an unintentional teacher, awakening what others aren't ready to confront. But that awareness comes with a cost. To walk this path means learning to be misunderstood. To be real is to invite misinterpretation. Many will call your boundaries selfish, your honesty harsh, your independence pride. What they really mean is, you no longer play by the rules of my illusion, and that frightens them. You've stopped feeding their need for control, validation, or comfort. You've stepped outside the dance of appeasement, and in doing so, you've broken an unspoken contract. The emotional system built on manipulation and silence begins to collapse, and people rarely thank you for removing their illusions. Authenticity, then, is not rebellion for its own sake. It's not about shouting truth to prove power. It's about quiet alignment, living from the center of your being instead of the expectations of the crowd. It's the decision to walk in integrity even when it isolates you. Because truth, no matter how painful, always frees. And while your authenticity may cost you approval, it grants you peace, the kind that cannot be taken away. The next time someone's hostility surprises you, pause before reacting. Don't rush to defend your worth. Observe. Ask yourself, what part of them is being mirrored right now? When you realize their anger is not a reflection of your essence, but a confession of their own inner war, compassion replaces confusion. You stop absorbing their pain as your own. You begin to live with calm awareness, understanding that even rejection can serve as revelation. Remember this: people rarely hate you for being wrong. They hate you for being real, because your truth reveals their lie. And the human ego will fight to protect illusion before it dares to face itself. If this message resonates with you, let it remind you to keep standing in your truth, no matter how many turn away. Authenticity may cost you people, but it will never cost you peace. Comment below: I choose authenticity over approval. And if you believe in the power of truth, subscribe, because your journey to self-mastery has only just begun. When you begin to live in truth, something remarkable yet unsettling happens. The world starts to rearrange itself around you. People you thought would always stand beside you quietly drift away. Conversations lose their warmth. Rooms once filled with laughter become heavy with unspoken tension. It feels as though your authenticity has broken a silent agreement, an agreement that said, "We will all pretend together." Most people live under the tyranny of appearances. They build identities not to express who they are, but to protect who they fear to be. They speak in ways that maintain comfort. They behave in ways that preserve belonging, and they wear masks that shield them from the threat of rejection. But when you decide to live without a mask, you become dangerous, not because you wish to harm, but because your mere presence exposes the fragility of their disguise. Your freedom whispers to their imprisonment, and the sound of that whisper terrifies them. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He saw that the human psyche fears nothing more than self-confrontation. To face oneself, the lies, the envy, the repressed desires, is to dismantle the illusion of control. So rather than look inward, people direct their discomfort outward. They find someone to blame, someone to label, someone whose presence justifies their denial. And often, that someone is the one who refuses to pretend, the authentic soul who no longer participates in collective delusion. That is why you will notice a strange inversion in life. The purer your intentions, the darker the projections you attract. The freer you become, the more others will call you rebellious. The quieter you grow inside, the more others will accuse you of arrogance. The more peace you find, the more chaos you seem to awaken in others. Because truth by its nature does not only reveal, it disrupts. When a person sees you living without apology, their own compromises become unbearable. When they hear you speak honestly, their own silence echoes louder. When they see you walking in freedom, their chains begin to rattle. They don't hate your authenticity. They hate the reflection of what they've abandoned in themselves. This is why Jung said that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The hostility directed at you is not random. It is diagnostic. It shows where another's inner world remains unhealed, but it also holds a mirror up to you. Every person who provokes you, every situation that stirs discomfort, is revealing the unintegrated corners of your own being. You are both mirror and mirrored. To live consciously is to navigate this web of reflection with humility. It means recognizing that the same shadow you see operating in others also whispers within you. It's easy to call others envious or hostile. It's harder to notice the subtle ways envy or defensiveness live inside your own reactions. The goal is not to escape the shadow, but to integrate it, to look it in the eye and say, "I see you. You are part of me, but you do not control me." Integration is the sacred work of the soul. It's the process of reclaiming every part of yourself that shame has exiled. The fear, the weakness, the hunger for validation, the resentment, the pain. You bring them home not to glorify them, but to redeem them, because only a whole person can live freely. The fragmented self, still divided between light and dark, will always project its unrest onto others. And so, when people project onto you, do not mirror back their hostility. Mirror back awareness. You can say without words, "I understand your pain, but I will not carry it." You can walk through their rejection without bitterness because you've learned that it's not rejection at all. It's exposure. Your authenticity has simply unveiled the truth of their inner landscape. This understanding transforms your loneliness into sacred solitude. You begin to see isolation not as punishment, but as purification. God often separates you before he elevates you. When he calls you to be real, he must first strip away everything and everyone that cannot survive your truth. The solitude that follows is not emptiness, it's space. Space for clarity, space for peace, space for divine alignment. But make no mistake, this path is not gentle. Authenticity demands courage, because every layer of truth you uncover brings you face to face with resistance, not only from others, but from within. The ego will fight to keep its comfort. It will whisper, maybe you should just stay quiet. Maybe you should blend in again. But blending in is death for the soul. The longer you silence your truth to maintain peace, the more violent the storm becomes inside you. At some point, you must choose between external approval and internal alignment, between the comfort of belonging and the peace of authenticity. And this choice will cost you. You will lose people who only loved your mask. You will outgrow spaces that once felt like home. You will disappoint those who depended on your compliance. But you will find something infinitely greater, yourself. And once you find yourself, you stop chasing validation. You stop explaining your worth. You stop begging to be understood. Because the one who truly understands themselves no longer needs to be understood by others. Your truth becomes your anchor. Your peace becomes your shield. So when hostility comes, and it will, you won't see it as a curse, but as confirmation. The truth within you is shaking the illusion around you. You are not losing people. You are shedding pretenses. You are not becoming isolated. You are being refined. Every rejection, every cold stare, every silent envy is a test of whether you will keep standing in your light or retreat back into shadow. The world does not need more agreeable masks. It needs more authentic souls willing to bear the loneliness of truth until others are brave enough to join them there. Comment below, I will not shrink to fit illusions. And if this speaks to you, subscribe, because the journey toward light begins with understanding your own shadow. There's a kind of invisible war that plays out beneath every relationship. It's not always spoken, not always intentional, but it exists. A struggle for control, validation, and emotional leverage. Most people aren't even aware they're participating in it. Yet it silently governs the tone of conversations, the balance of affection, and the rise and fall of connection. It is what Carl Jung would call the unconscious dance of power, the hidden battlefield of the psyche. When you begin to live authentically, you disrupt that balance. You stop seeking approval. You stop negotiating your peace. You stop playing by the unspoken rules that give others emotional control over you. And when you do, the dynamic changes, the invisible hierarchy collapses. The person who once held influence over your emotions suddenly feels powerless. The one who drew strength from your guilt now faces silence where manipulation once worked. The one who relied on your compliance realizes you no longer obey invisible expectations. And for many, that loss of control feels like an existential threat. They don't see it consciously. They'll tell themselves you've changed, that you've become cold, arrogant, selfish, or distant. But what they're really saying is, you no longer feed my illusion of power. They confuse your boundaries with betrayal. They perceive your growth as rebellion, because your authenticity exposes the imbalance that used to benefit them. This is one of the deepest reasons why people turn against you when you evolve. Not because your truth harms them, but because it disarms them. They no longer know how to control the narrative. When you heal, the version of you they depended on no longer exists. The compliant you, the apologetic you, the fearful you, the one who carried the emotional weight of others. That version is gone, and with it, their sense of importance begins to fade. In Jungian terms, this is the collapse of projection and possession. They once projected their own insecurities onto you and possessed power through your agreement with their illusions. But when you awaken, you stop accepting their projection. You stop reflecting their fear. You become a mirror that refuses to lie. And that is when people panic. Consider how subtle this battle is. It appears in the friend who suddenly mocks your ambition, in the partner who resents your independence, in the co-worker who competes instead of collaborates. Each act of hostility is not random. It's an unconscious attempt to reclaim a lost sense of dominance. The human ego cannot tolerate equality once it has tasted control. Even silence becomes a weapon. The one who once praised you now withholds affirmation, believing their absence will humble you. The one who once supported your dreams now turns indifferent, hoping their coldness will shrink your light. This is not logic, as it's instinct, the instinct to re-establish emotional hierarchy. But here lies the truth that frees you. Their reaction does not define your worth. Their distance does not signal your error. Their silence does not mean you've failed. It simply means you've grown beyond the version of yourself that once kept their ego comfortable. Your evolution has disturbed their illusion of control, and illusions fight to survive. Power, after all, is not always loud. It doesn't always wear crowns or shout commands. Often it's quiet, disguised as emotional dependence, guilt-tripping or conditional love. It hides in phrases like "you've changed" or "I miss the old you." But what they miss is not you. They miss the version of you that made them feel secure, superior, or needed. You must learn to recognize this game without hatred, to see it for what it is, the soul's desperate attempt to avoid transformation. People use control because they fear chaos. They cling to authority because they fear insignificance. They dominate because they've never learned to lead themselves. So when your authenticity exposes that fear, they respond not with curiosity, but with defense. And their defense often takes the form of hostility. This is why Jesus said, "A prophet is not without honor, except in his own town," because the people who once felt stronger in your weakness will struggle to celebrate your strength. Your growth threatens the system that kept them in comfort. Your self-respect rewrites the unspoken script. And the moment you stop obeying that script, they begin to label you the villain. But make no mistake, this is not a curse. It's a calling. The hostility that arises around you is proof that you are no longer feeding dysfunction. It's the sound of the old hierarchy collapsing. The resistance you feel is not evidence of failure. It's confirmation of progress. When you refuse to participate in manipulation, you dissolve its power. When you refuse to justify your peace, you reclaim your freedom. Still, this awareness requires mastery, because if you respond to their hostility with anger, you've fallen into the same unconscious trap. You've re-entered the power game. The true strength of authenticity lies not in dominance, but in detachment. The ability to see the storm and remain centered within it. The ability to let others misinterpret you and still move with integrity. That is the essence of inner authority, the kind of power that cannot be taken, because it does not depend on control. Carl Jung taught that true individuation, the process of becoming whole, begins when a person withdraws their projections from others and claims responsibility for their own shadow. When you do this, you stop being a pawn in someone else's power struggle. You stop absorbing their emotions as your own. You stop explaining your existence to people committed to misunderstanding it. And in that silence, you find your liberation. You see, the moment you no longer need to win in the eyes of others, you've already won in the realm of the soul. When you no longer crave validation, you become ungovernable. When you no longer depend on approval, you become untouchable. That's why authentic people radiate an energy that both inspires and intimidates. They are free, and freedom is contagious. So when people pull away, let them. When they twist your words, bless them. When they project their pain, forgive them. Because you have something they haven't yet found, peace that doesn't come from control, but from surrender. The moment you realize you don't need to fight for your truth, you simply embody it. Every hidden battle loses power. The hostility of others is no longer your enemy. It's your initiation. Each act of rejection is an invitation to stand taller in grace. Each misunderstanding is an opportunity to refine your alignment. Each silence is a test. Will you betray your authenticity to regain approval, or will you remain steadfast in who you've become? The real war was never between you and them. It was between truth and illusion, and truth always wins, not by force, but by endurance. Comment below, "My peace is my power," and if you feel the truth in these words, subscribe, because the next step is learning how to remain free even when envy turns silent and love turns cold. Envy rarely arrives with noise. It doesn't shout your name in anger or announce its presence in confrontation. It enters quietly, in glances that once carried warmth but now seem colder, in smiles that fade faster than before, in the silence that suddenly fills the spaces where celebration used to live. Envy is subtle, patient, and devastatingly polite. It hides behind phrases like, "I'm happy for you," while the tone whispers something else entirely. It doesn't strike openly because pride forbids confession. To admit envy is to reveal insecurity, and the ego would rather suffocate in silence than bow in humility. That's why the silence of envy is one of the most dangerous forces in human relationships. It corrodes connection without a sound. It turns friendship into quiet competition. It transforms admiration into discomfort. And it's often disguised as detachment. A person who used to cheer you on now grows distant, not because you wronged them, but because your light exposes the corners of their own unfulfilled potential. Carl Jung saw envy not as a mere flaw, but as a mirror, a painful reflection of the unlived life within the soul. When someone envies you, what they truly see is not your success, but their own possibility left unrealized. Your growth becomes a reminder of what they've postponed. Your discipline becomes a rebuke to their procrastination. Your courage becomes an echo of their fear. And because they can't face that truth, they turn the mirror outward and call it judgment. You'll feel this energy before you understand it. The shift is often so subtle, it leaves you questioning your instincts. Did I do something wrong? You ask yourself, but that's the deception. You haven't done anything wrong. You've simply evolved. And evolution always threatens stagnation. When your presence reveals the gap between who someone is and who they could be, they will either rise or retreat. Those who rise will celebrate you. Those who retreat will resent you. And their resentment will not always come through words. It will come through absence, through silence, through invisible walls of withheld affection. This is the silence of envy, the quiet withdrawal of warmth when you step into your light. It's the look that lingers too long, the compliment that feels sharp beneath the sugar, the support that fades the moment you no longer need it. Most people won't tell you they envy you. They'll tell themselves you've changed. They'll invent reasons to justify their distance. But the truth is simpler. Your authenticity has revealed a wound they refuse to heal. Yet here's the paradox. Envy is not inherently evil. It's a messenger. It exposes where the human spirit longs for more. When faced consciously, envy can become inspiration. It can whisper, "You could have that too, if only you believed." But when left unacknowledged, it curdles into bitterness. And bitterness blinds. It turns mirrors into enemies, reflections into targets. It replaces admiration with sabotage, love with quiet hostility. That's why the most spiritual response to envy, whether received or felt, is awareness. When you sense it in others, don't fight it. Don't beg for understanding. Don't dim your light to make them comfortable. Recognize it as a reflection of their pain, not your worth. Their silence is not a verdict on your success. It's a confession of their wound. Respond not with explanation, but with grace. Because when you understand the silence of envy, you become immune to it. And when you feel envy rising within yourself, because yes, even the awakened heart must face this shadow, meet it with honesty. Don't deny it. Observe it. Ask, what does this feeling reveal about what I've neglected in myself? The things we envy most in others are often the parts of our soul calling for activation. Envy can become a guide if you listen to it instead of hiding it. It can point you toward the life you're meant to create. But here's the truth. Not everyone will choose transformation. Some will stay hidden behind masks of denial. They'll convince themselves your peace is arrogance, your boundaries are pride, your purpose is obsession. They will twist your light to make sense of their darkness. And that's okay. Not everyone is meant to walk beside you in every season. Some were only meant to witness your awakening, not to understand it. To be authentic in such a world is to walk a lonely but sacred path. It's to keep shining, even when celebration turns to silence. It's to keep giving even when gratitude disappears. It's to keep loving even when love is withheld. Because your authenticity was never about approval, it was about alignment. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be real. The silence of envy teaches you to stop chasing noise. You don't need applause to validate purpose. You don't need recognition to confirm worth. You don't need understanding to justify truth. The absence of praise does not mean the absence of impact. Often your presence alone is the sermon. Your consistency is the message. Your peace is the evidence. So let them be silent. Let them withdraw. Let them misunderstand. Because the same silence that hides their envy also amplifies your light. You are not losing them. You are being refined. Their distance is not rejection. It's redirection. You are not falling out of favor. You are falling into truth. And one day, those who turned away will remember your light. Not with envy, but with awakening. Because authenticity, once seen, cannot be forgotten. It lingers in the memory like a seed planted in the soul. They may reject you now, but your example will haunt their illusions until they too are ready to face themselves. That is the quiet revolution of authenticity. It doesn't demand followers. It doesn't beg for applause. It simply is. And by being, it transforms, so keep shining. Keep walking in truth. Keep living in alignment even when it costs you everything familiar. For the peace that follows authenticity is not ordinary peace. It's divine. The kind that silence cannot corrupt and envy cannot destroy. Comment below, I won't dim my light. And if you're walking this path of truth and transformation, subscribe because your awakening is just beginning. And the world needs your light more than your compliance.